Welcome, everyone, to our July Citizens for Traditional Values Education Zoom update. We are honored to have you and hope you guys are all staying cool on this wonderfully warm day in Michigan. Eileen is coming to you from Lansing. I'm coming to you from Jackson. And we had an incredible response of people that were planning to join us. So we just wanted to really thank you for taking time. This will be recorded. We will make sure and get you all a recording of the session tonight. So with that in mind, if you have friends that were not able to hop on but you feel like would appreciate the content, we would just ask that you would share it and pass it on. Whether we have 5 people or 1,000 people, it can multiply and make a huge difference. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Amy Hawkins. I have the privilege of being one of the moderators. Eileen McNeil is our president with Citizens for Traditional Values. And we started doing this, for those of you that are new, started doing this a few months ago when we saw what was going on at the State Board of Education. And we realized there really is just a hunger for people to better understand what's going on in education, what can they do to make a difference. We are not without hope. We're a Christian team, Christian organization, but we welcome all walks. We believe that God has called us for such a time as this, and that we are to play a role, small, big, as candidates, as participants. And so our hope with this information tonight is that you will be energized, you will find hope, but that you will also take the information that you learn and you hear and that you will share it with others, whether it's texting the link to a friend, inviting someone to the next one, because really the future of our children, the future of our state is oftentimes very dependent on how much we get involved. So we welcome you to the table. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eileen. Eileen, welcome to our July session already.
Yeah,
Crazy that we're here.
nice hot and humid 3-digit weather, but we're
Yes,
used to
but it's
it. We're
not
from
snowing.
Michigan,
It's not
whatever.
snowing. Yes.
Yeah, no complaints. After all, we go through 9 months of winter, it feels like. So,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I'm going to start with just a quick prayer. We are a Christian, Judeo-Christian organization. So, Father God, I just ask for your wisdom and your grace over everyone listening on this Zoom, over the speakers. I ask for your protection for the candidates as they travel and they grow weary. I ask that you strengthen them and that you would strengthen all of those who are fighting the good fight, Lord, and seeking to restore biblical worldview values to our state and our nation. We pray for those in authority, Lord, as you command. And we thank you for this opportunity to talk to each other, Father God, in Jesus' name. Amen. So I just wanted to quickly do a quick overview of what we're going to cover. And it looks like I froze.
Oh, I can see you. You look
Okay.
great. Yeah,
Um,
you look great.
we're going to have our wonderful State Board of Education candidates tonight. And then Katie Boussard from Salt and Light Global to give us an overview of what's happening currently on our State Board of Education and some of the federal cases that have been brought uh, that are really important to our school districts to make them follow the law. And just in general, an update. Katie has been intimately involved in many of those cases, and we look forward to hearing from her. And then, really, to give you an overview and give you a chance to tell about what is happening in your areas. If you want to share an event at the end that you'd like people to attend, we're going to give you that opportunity too. But first up, I just wanted to make sure you all had seen a couple of Michigan news items that caught my eye. And sometimes they fall between our memos. I hope you're all getting our memos and that they are, something that you gather a lot of information that is useful to you. We do a memo every other week. But one of the articles was, I don't know if you saw that, Representative Joe Aragona out of Clinton Township. He introduced House Bill 5974. And basically, it's a bill restoring parental access and had to have the right to review your children's medical records. I don't know if any of you have children that are like 11 and older, but it was a great shock to me when I had to ask for permission of my son for me as a parent to see his medical records when he was 12 years old. So, thankfully, Representative Aragona crafted that bill. It passed the House. It went on to the Senate. We don't know what's going to happen. I wish I could say it's going to go through the Senate. This is another reason to get back the majority. But just common sense, we parents, uh, last I knew, when they're 12, 13, 14, all the way through 18, 19, we're pretty much paying the bills and we're bringing our children to the doctor. And it's obscene that somewhere along the line, policy and rulemaking took place that required parents to have permission to see all of their children's medical records. So good news on that end. Another point of good news. Um, and I believe, I don't know, Amy, if you got back word, but when we were fighting MOASH, when we all were talking to the State Board of Education and bringing your attention to this organization called MOASH, Michigan Organization of Adult Adolescent Sexual Health, that have been really the vendors of the state of Michigan pushing their agenda, their LGBTQ plus agenda in all of our public schools. We had earlier on, we had Representative Tim Kelly, who is in charge of the Department of Education Appropriations Committee, and had line itemed out the funding for that. That funding is gone as long as the governor signs it. It has passed through the House, through the Senate, and I believe the governor did sign the budget, but I'm not sure. We're checking. But that's really good news. I want you to know that's really good news. And your representatives do hear you. It's just to encourage you that you're not just, beating your head against the wall. They are hearing you. They are listening. They're doing everything they can right now without a majority, and that still happen. You can still lead from the minority when it's a good idea, when it's the right thing. And so that is another piece of good news. And the last thing, and Katie will get into this a little bit, you all saw the Supreme Court ruling since we last talked regarding boys in girls sports. And the Supreme Court ruling centered on that Title IX, whether males could compete in female high school sports teams. Well, they did rule and say no, that any state that already has a law banning boys from being on girls' teams or vice versa, those laws are legitimate, those are constitutional, they're upheld, which is great. They didn't take it one step further to make it a national ruling, because states like ours does not have such a ban. And Katie will get into a little bit of what the MHSAA is allowing in terms of Michigan. But again, back to elections, you all know how important this is. We have a majority who agrees with our values. That will be a bill on the desks that we will push for in our state legislature, and hopefully our governor, our next governor, to approve and sign, so that we know our girls are kept safe on our sports teams, that boys play on boys teams, girls play on girls teams, and
What a radical
the whole
idea.
locker room.
Yes.
So from there, I'm going to go on to introducing Bree Moeggenberg, our wonderful State Board of Education candidate. Bree is a mother of three, longtime advocate of children and families. For 2 decades, almost 2 decades, she worked as a licensed childcare provider, small business owner out of Midland, Michigan. She has firsthand experience in childhood development, which is an awesome background to bring to something like a state board of education that is dealing with children. We all know, I think if you've heard Bree, the race is not political, but personal. As any parent would see, she has worked hard with her own children for their academic success, and she wants to see other children succeed. She also co-authored a book that helps teach parents, uh, helps parents teach children facts about anatomical knowledge as a tool that can help prevent abuse. And she's been a part, there you go, no schmonouns. I love it. And as a grassroots Republican state committee woman, she brought and brings practical experience and good governance to look for solutions in her role with the state committee. So, Bree, just a brief background. You can fill in the rest, why you're running, what you plan to do, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for being on here. And CTV, thank you for hosting this and helping to educate because so many parents and educators don't have the support that you offer. As an individual, you said it, and I will say it again. This is personal to me. This is not political. We all know it's all actually political, but this is personal. I have two girls that graduated towards the top of their class and they were also scholar athletes. So it's a big problem when we talk about boys being able to potentially take that away from them. And you brought it up earlier about the bill that was introduced to make sure that parents have knowledge. When my daughter had turned that age and had gone to school or had gone to the doctors, we made it very simple. You have a choice to keep that information from us, but if you choose to not allow me to stay in that room, you're not going to get your car paid for, you're not going to get your sports paid for. So, of course, she made that choice. But in the room at that time, do you know the questions that they asked about? They were very detailed about her sexuality and if she,
Yeah.
her sexual orientation and her gender identity. The reason that I got involved so deeply was because when she was in seventh grade, they were talking in English language arts class about sexuality and having them journal it. She's now graduated, so that was years ago. But that was a red flag. Simultaneously, at the same time, we had a staff at the school who went on to be booked and now now sits in prison for being a child predator and getting busted in a sting operation. And he was speaking against us, promoting that. So that's when I started to pay attention. That's why it's personal to me. It costs tons of money to be able to move school districts. The reason that I am qualified for this position is not because I have a PhD, because I don't. It's because I'm a mother. I understand the importance of good governance. And the reason that we elect people to this position is to govern and represent the people. This is not to push personal ideologies. So, from the position of school board, I have a motto, a slogan. I love it. And I will say very clearly Democrats hate it because they tell me I cannot have three first. I'm telling you right now, I will stand solidly on the ground that there are three firsts when it comes to student success. First is kids, second is parents, and third is education. If we make decisions and we do not say, are they good for kids? We go back to the drawing board. If they do not also honor parents, because we all know that state law puts who first in charge of their child's education? Parents. That's good governance, knowing that, right? And thirdly, does it support educators, the people that are in the education building that are working with our students? If it does not, we go back to the drawing board. But the top three priorities, and I'm going to start from the bottom, is we need to reinforce fiscal accountability. No matter how much money we throw per pupil and at the schools, it does not matter if those resources are not getting to the classroom. We need to, number two, revive curriculum. So, how many of us know that we stand 44th, right, in reading in fourth grade in the nation? But we need to revive our curriculum. We need to bring back core academics. We need to teach civic education. If you have not listened to the recent State Board of Education meeting when they passed the 250 resolution, I wrote that. And I encourage you, go to my social media page, Bree for MISBOE, and just watch the snippets. They did not believe we lived in a constitutional republic.
Wow.
But needless to say, We also need to make sure we are removing all of that screen time that they have. If you look at other countries, for instance, China, they actually have laws that ban certain amounts of screen time. But we also need to restore movement and we need to bring back handwriting. And the reason for that is it actually activates the prefrontal cortex. And when that's not activated, we end up with kids that are in fight or flight mode. Once we do that, though, we're bringing back that curriculum that's going to put critical thinking at every grade level. And we need to look at the merit curriculum that's set because we do not have trades as a requirement and we do not have life readiness skills as a requirement. But before any of that can happen, the number one priority, and I say this as a common sense childcare provider that understands if there is chaos and kids are in fight or flight, if instructors are in fight or flight, nobody is going to be educated. In the example that I want to ingrain with you before I share with you my priority is if somebody is on a roof getting ready to jump off, is that the time you approach them and talk to them about the number one curriculum in America? That's not the time to do that, right? You need to get them back to safe space first where they can think. The number one priority is we need to restore the instructional focus. And that means we go back to classrooms that are neutral, where parents are not dealing with chaos and being dishonored. We need to make sure that when we are mixing gen ed and special education together, that those teachers and students all have support because it's not okay to push gen ed to the side and leave them out on education. We need to look at reinforcing that with the instructional focus. So again, kids first, parents first, education first. We need to revive instructional focus. We need to restore curriculum and we need to reinforce fiscal accountability. There's many things that you're welcome to go to my website. You're welcome to send me emails. But if we have time, I'd rather open up to a few questions if people have specific questions.
Sure, we have time. So have at Bree. You've got her all to yourself. So feel free
If
to.
if you have a question, feel free to either drop it in the message box or maybe even I think Bree would probably value too hearing what are the things that you, even as you find yourself wanting to talk to your neighbors about the importance of the State Board of Ed. Maybe there's some questions that come to mind. You're welcome to raise your hands. We're glad to put you on camera. But if you have any questions, things that, or even suggestions for her, like, listen, if we get you onto the board, here's what we'd like to see. We would welcome that as well. I'll start with the first question, Bree. Out on the campaign trail, like, what are you experiencing? A little background. I feel like I have a friend that's doing a lot of calls right now, like through absentee voters, and just really feeling like this is a season that it's going to be pulling teeth to get people excited and engaged. Are you finding anything that seems to really be clicking, right? You're seeing that people are passionate about 1, 2, 3, or 4, or any suggestions for how some of the friends here could really help
Absolutely.
on that topic for your race?
Yeah. So I can say all together in totality, every candidate that we have, even as we look at the primaries, education is a top priority. And I think a great talking point is our education is not just declining, but we have students and teachers that are leaving public education. And if we don't make change to retain those students and start bringing students back, if we don't have good teachers that are trained, that are going to be prepared to stay, that feel supported, public education will continue to slowly die. And my personal view on this is that as a parent who did in-home childcare, I had every opportunity that I could homeschool my children. There are other families that can travel school of choice. Not everybody has the capability, though. When I left from one school system to go to the other in the same county, I had to sell my house. I could only move so far to keep my business. It was really difficult to do, and it cost a lot of money. But what's going to happen is if we don't start making the changes and improving the proficiency, improving the standards, the quality, and kids continue to leave, what happens? The funding goes down for each school. And what did we just see happen in Detroit? We've had schools that have shut down, and who will be the most harmed by that? Will be those of the lowest income who aren't going to have the ability to travel somewhere else, who don't have the money and the finances. And there's different ways you can say it. I can say it with a negative approach that to say if you want to destroy a nation, destroy education. But I
Mhm.
can also say if you want to encourage the growth of a nation, encourage education. And that right there is the bottom line to everything education.
We have a question from Catherine Given. She's asking, how can I make calls or walk for you?
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking that. And anyone on here, I encourage you, both Terence and I, we work together. So if you don't know, all of our campaign materials is split in half. We have everything together. We just ordered some yard signs, but we have on our website, both of us have a sign up where you can sign up to do that. And as a door knocker, I remind you this, our races are down ballot, which is not the same as nonpartisan. We are a partisan position at the state board. Your local school boards are nonpartisan, but if people vote straight red ticket, they're voting for us. So if they vote a straight Republican ticket, they're voting for us. So if you are able in your area to door knock, I encourage you to connect with your GOP because when you door knock for one person, you can potentially door knock for many others that are on that ballot as well.
That's a great suggestion. And I think Eileen or myself, I mean, if any of you have questions about how do we get connected with our local kind of, people that can help us with that, feel free to send us a message. We would be happy to do that. Another question for you, and then Eileen, I'll throw it back to you. How do you feel about the books that are pervasively vulgar, removing these from school libraries? And that's from Susan.
So thank you for that question. As a state committee woman, last summer, I actually wrote a resolution that encouraged our legislators to do two things. And I'm going to preface this by saying I pushed this really hard on the state Republican Party because, right, many people like us knew what was coming down the chute. But two things that resolution did. Number one, it defined to urge legislators to define that sexual education had to be a very distinct course. So it could not what? Be trickled into other classes. The second thing is that it requested that in state law, librarians are actually exempt from being able to share sexually explicit content. And what it did, because you have to keep in mind when decisions are made on policy, you have to look at the parties that you have and where their decisions will lie. Because if you're going to pass, you have to have enough votes to do that. So we had urged legislators to, in that part with the librarians, require by law that they notify parents and they allow parents to opt their child in. Otherwise, it would be illegal for a librarian to share that. And that was kind of the mediocre because, right, the House is Republican, the Senate is Democrat. That was kind of the balance to do that. It never went anywhere. But of course, that's where I stand. And I think that the pornographic material, if it's going to be read, should be done so with parent permission only.
Right. Yeah, so important. Thank you, Bree. And it's good to hear you are on it. You're hitting the pulse of I can't think of anybody who wouldn't be thrilled to have you on that board. We sure wish you were there last October. I am going to
Thank
move
you.
now to your colleague, Terrence Collins. And Terry, you may not know, Terry lives in Grosse Pointe Park, and my mother used to live in Grosse Pointe Park, and we grew up in Detroit, right across the street from Grosse Pointe. But Terrence is a lifelong Michigander. He grew up in St. Clair Shores, graduated from UV Mercy, father to three grown children, has three young grandchildren, and two of those grandchildren are currently in elementary school, I believe. He is an award-winning senior financial analyst with one of the Detroit's big three, and has overseen billion-dollar financial transactions on a daily basis. Really glad to hear that experience, Terry, that our board desperately needs as we watch the funding continually to go up for administrators and the school administration and even teachers, but not seeing it funnel down to the children. And be great to have somebody with your background on that board. Terry's journey into the local school board politics began in the spring of 2020. I think everyone knows what that spring was, the COVID era, and he spent 2 years trying to get the children back in school in the Grosse Pointe schools. And also fought, apparently, I believe you had fought to remove the mask mandates as
Oh yeah.
well. And by the June of 2022, Grosse Pointe schools had lost 840 students, or 11% of their pre-COVID enrollment, and $9 million in their fund equity. So Terence was called upon to bring his expertise to that Grosse Pointe School Finance Committee, Finance and Facilities Committee. And he and other local business people right-sized their budgets. And I'm sure, Terence, that experience gave you an eye-opening look into how public schools are run, which is awesome to have that experience going into the State Board of Education, and restoring fiscal responsibility on a state level as you did on the local level. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, for me, it was eye-opening the years I spent kind of, I was like a lot of parents. I say this, not really, my kids were good students. My middle son may be a little bit challenging, but the oldest daughter and the youngest daughter were great students that never really worried about what was going on in the school system. Our school went through some reconfiguration and closed a couple elementary schools, but it wasn't something that affected my daughter particularly, just because her elementary was not on the chopping block. But when COVID hit, I was concerned because as we went through that initial summer, I recognized that we had no leadership in place to get our kids back in school, and they were just floundering, and where we were uniquely placed in Wayne County, because Wayne County was one of the heaviest mandated counties in the state. But right across our border in Macomb, I mean, we butt up against St. Clair Shores and Warren. All of the Macomb schools did not have the same requirements. So our kids couldn't go back to school. Our kids didn't go back to school for a full year till April of 2021. And then we're in masked until April of 2022. While, again, the kids back across the border, literally 2 miles from us, were in school in 2020, in the fall of 2020. And then we're without masks of all of the next school year, starting in September of 2021. So it was eye-opening. I wanted to do something about it. My daughter was a competitive swimmer. She's a state, I forget what they call it. She's an all-state swimmer. They finished in a couple events in the top 8 in the state, in Division II. And so what was equally troubling for me was that my daughter couldn't go to school in the fall of 2020, but MHSAA, which I'm sure we'll talk about more today, MHSAA decided that they were going to have fall sports in September of 2021. Sorry, it's September of 2020. So even though my daughter couldn't go to school for class at 3:30 every day, she could go and spend 2 hours in the pool with 50 girls without a mask on. So that was very interesting. And that was that's the only reason I'm still in Michigan, was because of fall sports. If not, we were going to be in Florida. I would have been in Florida and probably stayed there, just because I wanted my daughter in school. But she was such a good swimmer, and that's what she wanted to do. So we kind of put up with the fact that she wasn't in school. But just to kind of talk about, my priorities, and then they're not really at all different from Bree's. I maybe will state them a different way, but I think number one for me is raising student achievement in Michigan, as we talked about. And I've got a lot of slides on my website. If you go to my website, there's a lot of detail there that talks about the various things that I believe are important. And I apologize, my printer just decided to work after 30 minutes of sending it something. Anyway, so raising student achievement. I mean, obviously, I think everyone understands that last year in 2025 and kind of carrying over in this year, Michigan's ranked 44th in 4th grade reading. And that's down from 2018 when Whitmer took office and when the Democrats took control of our State Board of Education, we were 32nd. Not great, but kind of middle of the pack. Now we're 44th and seemingly not going to have any improvement, I don't think, in the next couple of years. Yes, we've returned to the science of reading as a state, but the COVID lockdowns hit our kids especially hard because we were not a phonics based in our reading, and we really lost the focus in our state, and so we need to get back to that. It's going to take some time, but we need to get back to that. Rebuilding trust with parents. Obviously, the transparency and accountability of our school districts, especially with what happened with COVID, I think there's still a lot of lack of trust with parents and what's going on in our school systems, not only from an academic standpoint, but obviously from some of the indoctrination that we all know is happening in our school systems. Yes, we have local control of our school districts, but we have a State Board of Education that's pushing an agenda. And some of our school boards kind of believe that what they're sent to them as guidelines by the State Board of Education are actually law. So a lot of our school districts take what the State Board of Education feeds them and just they take it as gospel and they incorporate it in their policies and procedures. And then third, promoting safe, fair, and student-centered schools. Again, by supporting common sense policies that we need in Michigan. Obviously, not having schools focused on indoctrination. Some of the other things that we know, having girls only interscholastic sports that are biological girls only in girls sports. Again, when we talk about what's happening at the MHSAA, yes, the Supreme Court voted that if you have a state law that says that you won't have transgender athletes in your female sports, unfortunately, our current MHSAA guidelines and rules allow it. And so if a transgender student submits a request to the MHSAA, they're more than likely going to grant it. And you're going to have a transgendered athlete in your daughter's sport, whether it's volleyball, softball, swimming, or whatever that sport may be. And we can't have that in Michigan. That's not common sense. These are not like 50-50 issues. These are 90-10 issues, if that. I think more and more people across the state understand that this is just wrong. Again, we have to promote policies that are based on fairness, safety, and common sense in our schools. And we have to have boards focused on students and not politics. And parents. Parents' rights are very important in our school districts. And I'm all about that. And yes, fiscal responsibility, it kind of, that oversees everything. I tell people every time I speak that we don't need to spend more money at the state level. I think as you touched on, if you look at the numbers, and again, I have all of this on my website, if you look at the growth in the administration level within our school district, it's like a 300% growth in the number of administrators while we've lost 300,000 students in the last 25 years across the state of Michigan. So how can you be losing students but be growing administrators consistently? And those are well-paid administrators, and that's not just administrators at the local level. That's administrators at the state level. Our Michigan Department of Education had about 325 employees in 2000, and right before the split with MI Leap, which basically took people from two departments and created a new department in Michigan. But we were up over 650 employees in the State Board of in the Michigan Department of Education. And the other thing, which I found out over the course of being a candidate, is 80% of them don't come to work every day. 80% of them are still working from home, which means probably 50% of them aren't working at all, right? But again, how can you be losing students, be losing places in academic excellence, and keep growing the government? I mean, the Michigan Department of Education has become a jobs program for Gretchen Whitmer and the Democrats, and we need to stop that. We need to pare that back. We need to take all the dollars that are in those salaries and move them back into the classroom. I mean, that's critical. Again, we don't need to spend more money at the state level. We need to make sure that those dollars are going to where they need to go, to the classrooms, going right to students and not to administrators, and not to administrators at the state level.
Terence, in the chat, we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One's about how do you feel about the Mississippi education model and the retention of third graders if they're not proficient in reading. We
Yeah.
had that, we had finally gotten that law passed, and it was immediately rescinded in 2023.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So Whitmer did that as well. Yeah. She rescinded the law. Yeah, absolutely. And so I believe in the Mississippi. I mean, I believe in what Mississippi did 100%. It's a long-term plan. I mean, but there are incremental strides that will happen year over year as we move back to that science of reading model in phonics. Absolutely. There's been a criticism which I find really funny. So there's a criticism of the Mississippi model, and the criticism is, well, you know, a lot of what happened is that parents understood that if their kid wasn't couldn't read by third grade, that they'd be held back. So a lot of parents started spending more time with their kids because they didn't want their kid to be held back. It's really not about phonics. It's about parent involvement. And I look at that and say, doesn't make any difference to me. Like,
yeah, whatever it takes to get parents involved in their children's education.
Yeah, like if us telling you as a parent that your kid's going to repeat third grade because they can't read, then if that prompts you as a parent to get more involved, great, super. But I know that we all know that phonics works. It's what, you know, I mean, I'm 60 years old, so that's certainly what I had in school. I'm not exactly sure exactly when we switched. I know it was probably starting 20 years ago, but yeah, I mean, it only makes sense. Just a quick story. So during COVID, we had 120, 130 people at our school board meetings during COVID. And it wasn't equally split. It was probably 80% people who wanted their kids back in school and 20% telling us we were all going to die if we went back to school. And so, but what happened is we had these people that came up and said, oh no, we had a lady who was early childhood education, but she was a speech and language teacher. And she came wearing a mask telling us that kids can learn that she can still teach kids with masks on. And I'm like, I don't know anything about speech pathology, but I'm pretty sure that kids look at your mouth when they learn how to speak. As parents, they mimic you. And if they can't, if you're wearing a mask, they can't mimic you. I mean, learning how to speak is a lot about mimicking, not only just the words you're saying, but your facial expression and how your mouth moves when you say it. We all know, we all get frustrated at our kids because they, at a certain age, they start mimicking us. They're doing it because they're watching our faces, right? They're watching our mouths. Everybody knew that, but just the insanity that was constantly being pushed at us. I mean, obviously not at the local level, but at the state, national level, that no, we can't have this. Your kids can't be, our kids have to be masked. It was crazy. And so, yeah, I believe in the Mississippi miracle. I mean, I believe that regardless of whether it's 100% because of phonics or 100% because parent involvement, either way, it's the results speak for themselves.
Well, thank you, Terence. We're gonna move on to our next speaker. And if anyone has other questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try and get to them before our hour ends. But to be sure we cover each person, I want to introduce Katie Boussard. And Catherine, I'm not sure where I see you.
She's right here. I'll grab her. I've got her.
Okay. Catherine has been with us before. She's the COO of Salt and Light Global and is a school board member herself. And I see Catherine as one of our future Supreme Court justices myself, but she has been following all of these federal cases and intimately involved in, and you all heard her presentation on MOASH and the SEAB. And Catherine, thanks for coming on to do a quick update with everyone. Appreciate it.
That's quite the introduction, Eileen, and thank you. I'm going to try to stay focused and answer a couple topics that Eileen had asked me to address and then take any questions as much as I can. But first, you'd ask me just for a little bit of an update on the State Board of Education. And I will say the State Board of Education continues to have its current makeup. I'm so glad the first half of this meeting had the focus that it had, because it would be so amazing to actually have more balance on that board and more balanced representation. So please make sure that everyone you know knows the importance of voting and voting for people who share their values. We can't emphasize that enough. And I would also say with the State Board of Education, we talked a lot earlier in this whole series of Zoom calls about the changes that were made to the health education curriculum and standards at the state level, as well as the sex ed standards at the state level last fall. And I think we've talked about this before, but one of the biggest things that's truly happening right now and this fall as schools head back into session, but in many districts, even over the summer, they're considering some policies that would implement everything that was passed by the state at the local level. And I think one of the reasons it's so important to understand the power of the local voice is that we do have local control. And while these are the state standards, while there could be enforcement of consequences if schools don't hook, line, and sinker follow these, everything that we talked about before is true. Your local board does have a right and a voice to stand up against these standards. I took an oath, and so did all of your school board members, to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And these standards fall short of that. And so, as a school board member, in good conscience, I can say I took that oath to uphold the Constitution. I will uphold the supreme law of the land, and which is the Constitution, before I will uphold any type of lesser statute. And so, our district, we made an argument just about the liability of these policies for the district. And we were actually able to stop enforcement of the state standards at the committee level. And so my district is really opting out of that. I know several other districts have, districts that are not even necessarily conservative. I know Eileen has a resource. We have a resource at Salt and Lake Global on that any of you are welcome to share. And if you happen to see a couple things pop up on your agendas, if I can just give you a couple policy numbers to look for. Most districts across the state use a policy service that recommends what the school should do to them. And NEOLA is that organization. It stands for the Northeast Ohio Legislative Association or something like that. And they have policy number 2417 and 2418. And I'll copy these into the chat real quick. Or I'll copy.
And then we can grab it and do it in our follow-up email, Katie, as well.
Yeah, no worries,
Perfect.
Katie.
Yep.
We can include it.
I'm sorry, it's terrible trying to talk and add into the chat at the same time. So
no, you're great.
But there's a handout on that I really appreciate you guys sending out with that. But it gives more information and talking points that really can help your board actually say no to this. And by framing the argument, more about the liability of the district and the fact that this just isn't sound policy, it becomes a much more winsome argument, even on those divided boards. With that, I'll say State Board of Education. I know Bree mentioned something about a resolution, and she proposed a great resolution. There have been some good things, and including this resolution that Bree authored, to actually emphasize teaching history, teaching our heritage as Americans on the occasion of the 250th birthday of the country. That's a pretty exciting thing. There was also that same day another positive thing to highlight: a special education task force created. Most of you know special education Michigan has been absolutely a disaster. We have so many different title complaints and complaints rising where students are just not receiving the services, not to mention not learning to read in the first place. And certainly we have too many kids on the path of getting a certificate rather than actually graduating with a high school diploma. And so I'm hopeful that this new task force that Tom McMillan is going to be serving on will actually maybe be able to start addressing that problem. But there's a lot there, and I know time is short, so I'm going to keep moving from the State Board of Education. I wanted to touch a little bit on the BPJ versus West Virginia and Little v. Hecox cases. We actually filed the brief at Salt Lake Global in those cases and worked kind of from the lower federal courts all the way to the Supreme Court as those cases were moving up. And if you're not familiar, those cases were very much involving boys or biological males competing in girls' sports. And the ruling, in some ways, of course, was definitely a win for those states, for those plaintiffs that came forward, but it definitely was not the slam dunk that everyone was hoping for, where the Supreme Court was saying, hey, there's just no reason at all anywhere for men to be in women's sports. And there's a golden rule for anyone who might be discouraged with anything to do with the Supreme Court or justice. You have to ask the right question to get the right answer. And the Supreme Court gave a very narrow answer to this because I think a narrow question was asked and narrow circumstances. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But at the same time, they also handed power back to the states. And we have a lot of different layers of responsibility here. Title IX that protects segregation in sports, in academic competition, in all kinds of things based on biological sex only is still Title IX. It's still the law of the land. It's still enforceable. As a local school board member, I can still say I took an oath to uphold that law right along with the U.S. Constitution. I did take that oath, and so did every other school board member. At the same time, I can also say as a local school board member, I want my students to be able to compete in sports. And in Michigan right now, really our only athletic opportunity is through the MHSAA, the Michigan High School Athletic Association. They are proposing beyond even what the Elliott-Larsen Act or any state law in Michigan would require. They're proposing that transgender students must be allowed to play in the sport of their preference. They say they have a rigorous vetting system, but they really don't. A lot of students are flying under the radar and not being vetted at all and just being allowed to go where they please and taking away opportunity, just like we saw in Ann Arbor this past spring with the volleyball team, taking away opportunity from female athletes who've worked so hard to get where they are. And as local school board members, we still have a voice. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But it's important that we also recognize that citizens have a voice, a different layer of responsibility. And as long as this is a state issue, we can petition the legislature, we can petition the MHSAA as individuals, as citizens, and say, we want to see this change. And we can ask our legislators to change the law. I can tell you, and Eileen could tell you, that ask will be a lot more friendly if we have people that share our values sitting on the other side of that call. And there's a major election coming up this year. Again, please vote for people with biblical values. Please help other people that you know vote for people with biblical values. It's so important. Midterm turnout is often very poor, but there's over 1.5 million kids around this state whose daily lives are shaped by the people in Lansing and the people in Washington, and the people that are in those seats, in those places, are put there by us. We really truly answer to God for the decisions they make and how we work to get them there. So I don't mean to oversell that or hit that too hard, but
will you say that number again, Katie? How many kids?
There's about 1.5 million students in Michigan in schools. If you count traditional brick and mortar charter schools, it's pretty sizable. And that many children depend on you using your voice, your vote at the ballot box.
That's really good.
If that's not a reason to vote, I don't know what is.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt. Oh no, little v. Hecox, it really did. I'm sorry. Little v. Hecox, it really did hand the authority back to states, just like Roe did, to say, are you going to protect girls? If you protect girls' sports, if you have a reason to divide them, then we'll support that. And Title IX does say, if there's a reason to divide the sports, that they should be divided. If there's a safety reason, some other reason. So it's still in keeping with the law, the way the Supreme Court ruled. It's not a bad ruling, it is a win, but it forces us to do the hard work.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we should shy away from. The last thing I'll try to cover really quickly is just using your voice as a local school board member. I know we have at least one other school board member on here because I saw Gary Wunk when I was coming on.
I saw Monica on here as
Oh,
well.
Monica, wonderful.
It's probably a couple others.
Glad to hear there's more of you out there. I'm working on a resolution that we can sign on to as individual members, individual elected officials serving on school boards, that would be sent to both the Michigan High School Athletic Association and the Michigan legislature, petitioning them to change our laws and protect opportunity for every student, particularly female students and male students. There's a school in Michigan right now, Chippewa Valley, that has a so-called transgender female student competing on a boys swim team topless. And the boys feel like it's a trap. They don't feel safe. They're quitting the swim team. She's using their locker room and everything else, and they feel like they don't have an opportunity to compete anymore. It can go both ways, and we need to use our voice to stand up for those students. So I'll get that resolution when it's ready out to all of you that are on Eileen's list as well. And I think if we can get signatures and stand together, perhaps our voice could really have an impact there. But I just want to remind you guys, as school board members, sometimes it's so tough because we get in the weeds, and maybe you're thinking about running for school board and you're not sure, is it really worth it? There's definitely a cost. You may get, dragged through the mud of social media or maybe even a local news source. But again, 1.5 million kids across our state. And as a school board member, you get a seat at the table. And if you win that seat, I really believe that God put you there for such a time as this, to be a voice for his truth. And every vote is an opportunity to vote your values on policy, on budget, on contracts, and even on the superintendent who's going to administer and enforce all of those things administratively. If you can influence those 4 areas, you can make a huge difference. You have the opportunity to build relationships. And I would just say it's not something that I take lightly, the opportunity that I have to build relationships with my other board members, with the community, with the staff. It's an opportunity to be a light and a witness there for sure. You have an opportunity to serve. That alone is always worthwhile, even if it's volunteering at a book fair or cleaning up after a festival. It's an opportunity, again, to be salt and light. You have an opportunity to communicate with your constituents, and that should be two-way communication, not just you talking, but really listening and hearing what they have to say as well, what their concerns are, and how we can work towards solutions together. And you also have the opportunity and a whole new platform to advocate for the changes that you want to see in other layers of government. As a school board member, so many people will tell you, your voice is only your vote, but there really is more to it than that. And I would just encourage you all, if you're thinking about running, really pray about it. And then keep in mind the deadline to run, if this hasn't already been mentioned tonight, the deadline to run is July 21st, 1 week from today. You must file with your local clerk by 4 p.m. So July 21st is the deadline. And the more Christians that we have in the gap, the more we can move the needle on these critical issues.
Katie, you just gave me a great segue because we wanted to invite everyone on this call to please share our follow-up memo tomorrow, share our previous emails, that we have a Zoom, it's a virtual campaign for training for school board members. So some of you on the call may want to run, or maybe somebody might want to run, but they're hesitant. They they don't know what would it entail, how many hours, how much money, I don't even know the first thing about campaigning. We want to meet that need. So please know that we have a campaign training next Monday night with Matt Wilk. It's virtual. You could do it from the comfort of your living room or wherever you are. And we would love to have you at 7 o'clock next Monday night. And you'll get that information. Again, we've sent it out a bit, but we'll send it again tomorrow in our wrap up email from today. And we would ask that you all on the call would forward it to other people, just any friends, family, anyone you can think of. Who knows? Who knows? Might, God might speak to their heart and like, yep, this is what I want you to do. And I want to, Katie is not have a child in the school district that she is on the board for. And she has made such an impact on that board. She's a member of the community. So please don't feel like you have to be a parent either. And grandparents, you have lots of time on your hand, more time than the busy parents trying to raise the kids who are in school. If you feel led to do this, you know what? We will try and hook you up with people to surround you to help you do the simple door-to-door stuff or a mailing. Don't be intimidated. There's lots of ways to connect with people. But your voice is important, and it does not matter what age you are, does not matter if you are a parent or not. And we welcome everyone to join us for this training. Just we're doing the real nuts and bolts. How would I file? What does that form look like? Matt is an awesome teacher. We'll be sharing some things that we teach from CTV and our political leadership trainings that we do. Just so that you feel you'll get a lot of information in an hour and a half. We won't take your whole evening. But so important, and appreciate Katie, what you're doing, and golly, Terence and Bree. We wish you well on the campaign trail. We want you on that board. We need you on that board. We need you on that wall because it's so important. And even if only to stop a bad vote from happening, like we saw what happened last October. So whoever can help Terence and Bree, when you see them, thank you for those who asked, how can we help? We will include their information to everybody tomorrow, also on that follow-up email, so you can contact them. And if they're in your area, some event, or if they need to have their, palm cards shared at your church about who they are, or you have a Bible study and nobody knows what's the state school board do? I mean, we kind of all know because we care and we're informed, but a lot of people are they're doing their best. They're raising their children, they're going to work, and they really don't know all of the races that are coming up this election cycle. And each one is so important. I mean, there are county commission races, there are township board races, and of course, the attorney general and the governor of our state and our next secretary of state. Every one of these people in the offices that they're seeking are so important for Michigan. And I know Amy and I and Katie and Terence and Bree and Monica, all you who are already doing this, we all are aware of how important these Michigan midterm races are. Put aside all your national stuff for a minute. You know what? The national, our presidential is not up here this year. We got to get people focused on our state, because guess what? Guess what impacts us the most? It is our school board. It is our township. It is our county, the ones that have the most impact. And then our House and Senate, and of course, our governor. But just be encouraged. You'll get information from us tomorrow morning or before noon, and we'll give you some of these links and things that you heard people mention. And I have like 2 minutes in case anyone has any quick questions or any last minute comments. Any of the guests who are on today, go ahead and let me know. I'm just quickly looking at your chat as well.
Sorry, go ahead. There was someone
this is Terry. I just wanted to say thank you again for the time. We really appreciate it. And as you said, you can reach out to us. It doesn't matter whether we're mailing you 20 pieces of literature, cards, palm cards, or 100. We'd be happy to do it, and we appreciate the support, whether you're walking, just your neighborhood, or you're walking as part of a larger group in a larger neighborhood. That's why we create this stuff, so that it gets out there in the hands of people who can hopefully present it to those people who need to see it.
Yeah.
And Bree had her hand up. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you all have not heard of it before, there is a site. It's called 10xvotes.com.
Oh.
And along the lines of talking to 10 people that are at church and they talk to 10 people. But it's imperative that we just have those conversations with our neighbors and the people that we're with every day. Because just like you said, a lot of people are busy, and it's not that they don't care. They're just not aware. And so everyone here has an opportunity, and the way that I would say it in my household is to serve the Lord by sharing that information and making sure that we're spreading it forward.
I have just two quick more notes. One, please feel free to vote absentee. Many of you may have gotten your ballots, or if you haven't already signed up to be a permanent absentee voter, please sign up to be a permanent absentee voter. And why are we asking that? Is because we have found, and all the data has shown, is that those who are getting those ballots in the mail, they're also the quickest to return them. And you can personally take it back. You don't have to put it in the mail. You can, if you feel like, oh no, I don't want to trust the mail, just get in your car and take it back to your township clerk or your county clerk. But then you won't get all the phone calls and emails. If they see that you're already voted, you won't get as many annoying calls or mail, because they know all these candidates will know you voted. And it really, really does make a difference. And secondly, Citizens for Traditional Values will be creating voter guides for the general elections, and we seek to put them in churches. I'm assuming, most of you attend a church. I am sure you've had some conversations with your pastors. We are looking to get our voter guides in our churches to really, educate our voters, get them excited, get them inspired and motivated to make sure they're voting with information. They're comparative. They're nonpartisan.
Oh yeah.
So if you have a church, please take, Amy's going to send the form. If you have a pastor that will take voter guides, please let us know. We really want to get into our faith community, and it's so important. And with that, it's 8:01, so I'm going to let you go. I'm getting the high five.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Do reach out with any questions. If we can't help between Katie, Bree, Terence, Eileen, and I, we definitely can point you in the right direction. With a final positive word, you just need to be encouraged that since we've started this email list and this gathering, we have gathered so many people that are concerned with education in the state. So you are not alone. And this really could be your holy moment when you have been created for this moment to step in and do this school board thing. So don't be intimidated. And if you ever need kind of that, hey, just talk me through it, we're here to support you. So with that, have a blessed evening, and we look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. Thank you, everyone.